Mike, for being here. My name is Rizwan. We have Barry Browne here, director from XenTegra, and we have Mike Stamos. Mike has been in Omnissa, currently been earlier in VMware. And Mike has been leading Omnissa business across Canada as well as Northeast America, and brings a diverse experience across all verticals, specifically talking about public, BFSI, financial services, healthcare, and many more. And Mike has been in leadership right from Citrix as well as Microsoft, and was in VMware before joining Omnissa. So Mike and Barry, I now hand it to you. Go ahead and start this podcast with all of the question and answers that we have got from Mike. And yep, let's make this conversation more interesting. Thank you very much, team.
Sure. Let me start off by first of all welcoming Mike to the podcast. Introduce myself, Barry Browne. I'm the Vice President of Sales for XenTegra Canada. So I'm heavily involved in the EUC space, the EUC community, VMware, vExpert, all the various community awards. So I really truly believe in this space, and that's why I'm kind of excited to kick off this podcast with Mike from the new Omnissa. That is, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Mike, but they spun off from VMware essentially, or it's a new business. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So maybe to start off, Mike, can you just introduce yourselves? Who are you? Where you came from? What do you do? And then we'll dig into it.
Excellent. Thank you, Barry. First of all, it's a sincere pleasure to actually be here and get this opportunity to speak with you. I'm delighted to the opportunity to talk about this. So who am I? Where I come from? I've worked primarily my entire career, the last 25 years in the software industry, with 13 years at Microsoft. I rounded up 2.5 years at Citrix in management, and then been almost 10 years, I would say, at VMware. And prior to that, came from the business side of the world. So basically, my career spanned many phases of starting from the business and then going into IT and learning how to bridge the two together. And now it's a great opportunity here at Omnissa for us.
All right, so that leads me into my first kind of question that I have for you is, we all know Citrix, we all know VMware. Then one day we heard about Omnissa. What is Omnissa? Where did it come from? Maybe you can tell us about the start of what does the word mean? It must mean something. Sure,
we'll start with what it means. So the name rolls together a number of words and ideas like omni, science. It's really to convey a sense of working calmly with all the knowledge and insight you need, no matter what you're doing or where you are.
So it does mean something. Okay.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so it's interesting. When I was in preparation for this podcast, I was Googling around Omnissa, blah, 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 and I couldn't find a definition. So, this is a world exclusive, if you will.
There you go. Got it. Straight hot off the press.
All right. So with your experience coming from VMware and from Citrix and now into the Omnis world, change is kind of a constant in the IT space. So maybe you can kind of get us caught up on what's been happening with Broadcom, with VMware and Omnis, and how it all kind of comes together or doesn't come together, depending on how you look at it. Maybe we can start there if you would.
Sure, I'd be delighted to. Well, for those of following the industry, Broadcom announced its intent to acquire VMware in 2022. And that acquisition completed in November 2023. And post-acquisition, they looked at their business in semiconductors and infrastructure as a service and realized that end user computing didn't really fit in their overall strategy. It was a very profitable business, very good business. So they put it out on the market to see who's a taker. There were a lot of respondents. And finally, as of July 1st, VMware UC Business became Omnissa, independent company, purchased for $4 billion by KKR, a reputable private equity company, a long-term investing company. And Omnissa is brand new, same industry-leading technology that you all know, the Workspace ONE and the Horizon, two staple products in the industry that global enterprises have been using for years. It's a pure play in the EUC market, and it operates bought for $4 billion, as I mentioned. It's embedded into 26,000 customers worldwide, 7 out of top 10 Fortune 500 companies actually use our software, and we're about 4,000 employees strong.
Wow, I had no idea you guys had that kind of a footprint. 26,000 customers in the Fortune top 100. A lot bigger is the wrong word, but a lot more diverse than I expected. So that's pretty interesting to me.
For sure, for sure. We're an established startup. That's
an established startup. Yeah, the world's biggest startup. Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct.
Wow. Okay. So you've obviously come with a fair share of management expertise, and now you've moved into a leadership role within Omnissa. Maybe you can walk us through what key experiences or moments kind of shaped where you kind of ended up today. You've obviously spoken a little bit about at a high level about your experience so far in the let's call it the IT space, not necessarily the EUC space. So maybe we can kind of leave it there. What key experience and moments got you where you are today?
It's really interesting. It really goes back to when I was actually working in the business in the railway. I was a closet developer, and I was playing around with computers and systems back in the day. I'm going to age myself.
Let me pause one sec, Mike. You said in the railway?
Yeah, I had worked for 9 years in Canadian Pacific Railway.
Oh, no way. Okay, cool.
Absolutely. Being a little bit of a railway buff. And, that's when it really started, to answer your question, in terms of how I got into IT and how my journey actually changed. I changed careers, so to speak. So I was working in doing some financial modeling for high-speed rail opportunities, as well as commodity and freight rail. And as technology kind of came into the railway, we were trying to improve business processes. So I was brought on board to be the liaison, business relationship manager. That's a term our industry had adopted back in the day. And to be the liaison between IT systems and the actual thing that we're trying to solve out in the field. And in that case, and they came to me to basically talk about, can you go find out what those business requirements are? Since you have a knack for IT, go talk to our developers and try to bridge that solution. And my inspiration came from my frustration, to be honest, that they were both speaking very, very different languages. The developers were cooking something in the kitchen, bringing it out in the field, and it would fail, fail, fail. And they're like, you just don't understand what my business does. And I got to a point where I closed the gap so well that I got discovered by other companies. I was working out west in Calgary with a company called Minerva Technology, and they were developing the first Windows 64-bit solution, and hired me into the consulting services game to do exactly that, to go out there and bridge requirements with software. And then from there, I got discovered by Microsoft, and when I joined Microsoft, to be quite frank with you, Windows was something you washed. I literally was like, okay, I use the operating system, but what is it? So my leadership basically became a leadership. How I got here is just by being curious, by emphasizing continuous learning, seizing opportunities, and having an impact and an influence in everything that I kind of took on. And that allowed me to get key experiences and exposures into the IT world, really mastered the services piece of the business, the integration piece of the business by working at Minerva Technology, and then bringing that into the software, and then really discovering the other gap where customers would adopt all this technology, but they'd have a hard time integrating it and making it real for users. And that's how it kind of went from there. A lot of M&A experiences shaped my leadership today and worked in different industries. And it's basically pivotal to how I continue to operate today.
Wow. Okay. The cool story about the railway. I'm a railway nerd too. So who doesn't like trains? So that's why I had to stop you and ask you about if I heard it right. But let me ask a follow-up question to that. So COVID kind of kicked off what we're all kind of calling the digital transformation. And just looking at your portfolio on LinkedIn, you obviously had a lot to do with digital transformation within VMware. Can you maybe speak a bit about what that looked like from within the VMware organization and how it kind of translated to Omnissa, if you would?
In terms of innovation at VMware, I mean, yeah. VMware was a company of acquisitions, and it was a beautiful strategy played out by Paul Maritz in the early days and Pat Gelsinger, and moving on from there is where they acquired a whole bunch of companies, and whether that was the EUC division of AirWatch in the time that's now evolved into a platform at Omnissa, or it was AVI Networks, Nicira that became NSX. And I have the privilege of looking at it from the VMware core, where I worked as a leader there. And the EUC division had dotted line into me, along with the networking and security division, the data center. And they really, implemented cross-functional innovation to try to really make it a platform. And what they did really well, and some other things not so well, but what they did really well is when they started to embed the kernel of, let's say, Carbon Black into the vSphere technology and Tanzu in the development in the vSphere technology, because of exactly what I talked about earlier. In trying to bridge the gap between infrastructure and systems engineers and the developers, because we would offer up some infrastructure and the developers like, I can't use this. I got to really develop faster. I got to develop securely and all of that. So by doing that at VMware, they were able to really bridge the gap to be able to understand the language of developers and the infrastructure IT people.
Okay. Sounds like I'm hijacking all your time here, Mike. So I'm going to give Rizwan. Sorry for kind of taking over here, but Rizwan, why don't you chime in and ask Mike a few questions? I have a big mouth. Sure. I like to hear myself talk.
It's all good. It's all good.
Well, I've been in as well in VMware, Barry. So I do acknowledge, it just sounded like pretty interesting, pretty familiar for me what Mike said about VMware and the strategies of VMware and vision of VMware actually, and that's how it went along for the end user computing space as well. Starting right from AirWatch, the erstwhile AirWatch, and now, as Mike mentioned, it's been a platform, including goes with Horizon as well. When we all started working with Horizon. So yes, Mike, with the Omnissa, which is actually a new chapter for me as well. When we finished VMware as such. Well, basically, when we talk about, we have been seeing a lot of innovations, and it's been a culture of innovations actually that we have seen in VMware. How does it gels with Omnissa today? Like, how does it goes ahead with Omnissa as a company? Like, how do you foster innovation here? That would be.
That's a great question. I believe we have an advantage of being a standalone company to really focus on a pure play in the EUC space. And if I take you back to post-2020, where the digital entropy has changed, I mean, we all went through COVID, and all of a sudden, it wasn't just about, working in the office and taking that experience and bringing it home. That presented a lot of challenges. So it's not just about the new devices we're seeing. It's also about the new apps that we're deploying, the new security tools, especially now, and the new operating systems, and the new, even now, the AI tools. You need a method to manage all this. So the employee expectations were, I'm going to go home and I'm going to get the same experience as I had in the office. But that bubbled up a lot of other challenges for the industry. It drove a need in the market. It challenged IT to provide office-like experience at home at a lower cost, and obviously created challenges for InfoSec security exposure, that every device that you don't know, you don't know what version it's in, you don't know what network it's on, and every app downloaded had to be managed securely, smartly, and still not compromise the end user experience. So that created a whole bunch of cost. So CFOs were faced with these big bills that employees were buying big routers and networks and things like this. We were deploying devices in people's homes, and they're like, hold on, there's got to be an easier way to go do this. And we stepped it up at our company, and we bring management, security, the employee experience together. We're integrating a platform play that breaks down the traditional silos as we think of a unified digital platform. That is our innovation strategy in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask a question, Mike. That's interesting. So for me, as a leader in an organization, culture is super, super important. How are you cultivating the culture within Omnissa, where it's, let's use the word, it's a young company, and so how are you kind of, finding your own culture? Let's leave it at that. How are you building the culture within Omnissa?
That's interesting because, I think we we all went through the Broadcom acquisition, and you know, it was a very different, parallel, opposite culture from where VMware was. And one of our executives brought something up, which is a nursery rhyme, analogy where, you know, Broadcom was different, so it was a bit too hard. The bed was a bit too hard, and then VMware was a bit too soft, and then Omnissa is kind of like just right. So we're trying to take the best learnings from Broadcom, which is a fabulous company, by the way. Broadcom, you can't argue with the success they've had in the market. And they brought on VMware, and VMware was running in silos, right? So we don't want to kind of repeat that. I give an analogy. Another analogy is I tell my teenager, we're moving, and I give him advance warning. And there's still a messy room, and there's half-eaten chocolate bars under the bed, and the moving truck comes, and then you take all that, you kind of bring it to the new home. What we're trying to do is really analyze, what did we learn about really quick execution from Broadcom? How do we preserve the employee engagement, the employee experience that we all loved about VMware, and create a real fail fast, learn faster culture that really gives employees a voice from the field level, so that the real big decisions get bubbled up at the top in terms of directional decisions. But generally, that's in a nutshell how our culture is defined.
That's awesome. I love that. What did you say was fail fast, learn faster? That's awesome.
Fail fast, learn faster. That's correct.
So I wrote it down and I'm stealing it. I was hoping you didn't copyright it, Mike.
No, it's not copywritten. That's all yours. All yours, Barry.
All right. Look, thinking back about your time at VMware, it's we're kind of doing the looking back before we look forward here. Looking back at your time at VMware, what's some missed opportunities that you wish VMware had pursued that you can bring now to Omnissa, where it's a little more agile, perhaps, of an organization than VMware was?
You know what? That's an excellent question. I just alluded to it, but I will dig a little deeper if you allow me. When VMware, from the lens of when I worked there for about 10 so years, is, like I said, they had a spectacular acquisition strategy. Because if you really think about it, as an infrastructure company, getting into development, getting into security, getting into endpoint management, getting all of these things. And one of the missed opportunities they did is they allowed these siloed businesses to run independently. Now, there's a pro and a con to that. So the reason they did that, they allowed it to run up to sometimes even 2 years. There was one executive in particular, I remember his voicemail was still saying "Welcome to AirWatch" a year and a half later after the acquisition. I was like, okay. So very, very different to companies like Microsoft. When I lived there, I worked there 13 years, lived there, same thing, is when they would acquire a company, like on a Friday, the announcement, Monday, there was the icon, the 4 colors of the icon right on the door. It's like, oh, everybody's now a Microsoftie. It's done. It was almost cult-like, if you follow me. Where here, they created these silos. And where I'm going with this is, from a customer lens perspective, they were difficult to do business with, because there was that many more contracts and that many workflows to be able to go get. And the missed opportunity was really to integrate that quicker and to make it simpler in the back office, where employees, especially frontline employees, could spend more time with customers instead of trying to get quotes out the door. And we at Omnissa, unfortunately or fortunately, we're cleaning all that up, but we're left with some of that legacy. So we're revamping systems, and glad to be independent to make sure that we spend much more focus on innovating in the UC platform and spending more time with customers and simplifying our back office. That was pretty much the missed one. But other than that, they had a spectacular acquisition strategy, unlike I've seen in the industry. Very well done.
Awesome. When we look at the workforce that's out there today, it's a lot different than it was. Let's call it pre-COVID. Let's leave it at that. And so looking back at your time at VMware, what's your most significant achievement pre-COVID? Kind of a trick question, but it's not.
To be honest, the pivot was being in the room with someone and being evangelizing and influencing. And I remember back in my day, and Steve Ballmer was on stage, and you can hear him screaming from the mountaintops sometimes, and such an animated character. I had a privilege of meeting him and Bill Gates. Very two different cats, you know, but together they were like peanut butter and chocolate. They were amazing. And I remember him saying these two words: is impact and influence. What is your impact in every meeting and every encounter? And what is your influence in that? And I feel that got stripped away from us. I got stripped away because we didn't have that human interaction. So the pivot about, you know, throttling your voice, making sure you have, when there are key points you have to get across, you have to do this through a screen, right? So I think, you know, that was the hardest transition for me as a leader to make, and to really think about, I don't have these people in front of me and I can't really exude that. So I'm the one who needs to change how I get through them. So ramping up one-on-ones, how are people feeling? How, you know, maybe they're going through something really, really wickedly bad in their personal life because everything just blended. And using empathy as a fabric of A, who I am, and B, how I could relate to what they're going through and how can I help them? So we all went from, you know, in this leadership, it was, you know, very back in the day, and thank God I didn't live too much of that, the dictator leadership, then it went to servant leadership. And then you find some leaders were trying to, oh, I'm a servant leader, but no, it's very evident that you're not, but you're trying. And then we got into coaching. And what I had to lean on really hard was my training in the Anthony Robbins organization. I'd spent 16 years in there part-time. I loved it, and really learned a lot about, you know, self-awareness, things that I had to come to terms with to be a better person, better leader. And then one day it just struck me. It was like, you know what? I got to be Mike. I'm the same at work as I am at home. And what you see is what you get. It's a WYSIWYG with me. And as soon as people started to relate with that, hey, we're all human and we're all trying to get a common mission done. I'm not saying we don't set direction. And you set direction, this is what we got to do, but there's no I in team. And I keep saying teamwork makes the dream work. That has helped me really have, you know, that significant achievement, not only at VMware, but throughout my whole career. And I continue to sharpen my saw in that area.
Yeah.
And it's certainly well.
Okay, that's awesome. Thanks. Again, given your experience, I think I'm done looking backwards. And let's start looking a little bit forwards. Let's break out the crystal ball. All your experience, everything you've done over your career so far. Talk to me a bit about where you think we're going, specifically around cloud computing, AI, work from anywhere. Maybe we can dive into that a little bit, as Mike's thoughts on, you know, where are we going with AI, where are we going with cloud, and we'll kind of dive into that a little bit.
AI is at the embryonic stages right now of being explosive, and there's an estimated 60% of jobs in advanced economies will be affected by AI. So we really need to think about
16 or 60?
60. Yeah.
Wow.
Will be affected by AI, and that comes anywhere from the menial tasks right now that are being done, stamping out cards, where all right to the frontline worker. And what is happening in the industry right now that I can see is we're really trying to figure out the biggest change possible, which is the AI, but we're doing it in little tests. We're personalizing it. We're personalizing how AI can make us work faster and have what they call anticipation technology. So I'll give you a really layman example for those that don't understand technology, that want to more or are looking at what's going on. I'm at a really high-class restaurant. I'm great. We're having a great evening. We're a circle of people. And I go and put my hands on the chair and I try to get up, and the server comes over and says, "Sir, the washrooms are this way." How did they know that that's what I wanted to do? Because smoking is banned. The chances I'm going to maybe take a cell phone call if I want to be, you know, outside, or I got to go. Right. So the experience that you have at that restaurant is just heightened now because they didn't really break any of your workflows. They didn't do anything. So back to what you asked me. AI has a way to be able to anticipate what the next move is by, in our world, self-healing of desktops, so you can have like almost no help desk tickets. Wouldn't that be a great way to figure that out, or really detecting that through our digital experience platform, really detecting what the issue is. So there's one of our customers had street cleaners. They were in one of the cities we work with, and their laptops were heating up in their GPS tracking and doing all this kind of stuff. And they, in the old world, would have to take the laptop, bring it in for servicing. But with this DEX technology, we were able to figure out that it was the charging cable that was bought was sub-quality and it didn't have enough amps, and it was heating up the laptop. So we were able to ship those cables directly to them in their pigeonhole where they check in every day, swap them out, 2 seconds, USB-C, finished. And then they didn't skip a beat in terms of productivity and what they had to go do. So companies really need to take the good things that AI brings and really personify it on the looking backwards from, in our case, from how the end user uses the technology, and that they're able to be more productive, seamless, no matter what network they're in, no matter what's happening. And it would anticipate self-healing and self-provisioning, and what these bots that are coming up to help solve a problem are very pertinent to the experience that they see. So that's where we're going.
Okay. So we talked about cloud, we talked about AI, and these are kind of, quote unquote, successful technologies. What about things that, were going to be the next big thing that didn't materialize as we expected? What are your thoughts on that? What are the misses, if you will, in upcoming technologies?
Yeah, I think the rapid adoption of edge computing has been a bit slower due to infrastructure and security challenges. I mean, right now, at the tip of my fingernail, I could have more computing than we did in a server room. So if you really want to go out there in the vision, and I believe in that vision, you have to balance a lot of things. So now we're going to 6G, 7G networks that were announced the other day that are, really robust, that are able to go into somewhere where we barely have any connectivity and make the end user experience rich to capture data in the field, whether that is farming, map that into weather patterns so that we can get the yield of the crops exactly when they're watered, when they're fertilized, et cetera, out to the market quicker and with higher quality. So that didn't materialize yet. However, I feel that platform companies like Omnissa have the advantage. There's no more like point solutions. You're going to get startups that come up and say, "Oh, I got the best thing since sliced bread," but it's built to solve a problem here. It's not really built to solve an end user experience like Omnissa has from all of the levers that it has to push, which is the end user experience, making it quick and secure, smart, and seamless. So as our definition of Omnissa is to work calmly from anywhere, and you don't have to worry about what's in the back. So as these mature, whether they're on-premise or cloud, it didn't go as quick enough in the extreme edge. But now with VR headsets, everything from watches or whatever devices we come up with, I believe it's going to catch up and fast. And AI and also the new networks that are coming up are going to make that possible.
Yeah, and secondly, Barry, just to add my experience here when I was in VMware, the erstwhile VMware, talking about AI, Mike, and that strikes me actually when we were doing we were doing a couple of POCs back in Workspace ONE with some of our customers, where we have to track what's the status of the batteries of the laptop that they have got, and that was the biggest issue that they had got. Every time the battery used to just blow up, and then it used to be a huge problem actually at that time. So when we leveraged Workspace ONE, the amount of, and the statistics that involved at that time was the amount of battery issues that used to happen dropped down literally to 35%. That was the kind of statistic that we have seen across with Workspace ONE, and that really brings in the piece of intelligence and the AI that encounters across in the end user computing space actually at that time. Yeah, so that was a huge hit for us, and it's a huge. I mean, that was a huge order for us actually at that time as well. So yeah,
I'm glad to hear that.
One follow-up question on that we didn't kind of touch on. I'm a big home automation guy, and home automation relies on IoT.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, Mike, is IoT falling into the hit or miss category? And maybe you can tell us, your thoughts on why.
I think it's going to fall into the hit category if we're able to take a platform approach to it. Because, you know, if you, I'm a home automation guy as well, because my time is everything. And you know, more time automating is more time with family and more time with work and better experience, like we've talked about. So I believe as long as the security around home automation, because there's a lot of companies like Nest, and I don't remember what I use a few different platforms, but like you probably have how many apps on your phone that controls you know, your home, right? So how do we extract that, make it secure, make it seamless? It's something that probably Omnissa could probably solve with you know, at the core, and make sure that, you know, it is anticipating what your next move is. Right now we're in the stages of, one of my apps is I'll tell you when you're within 60 or 50 kilometers of your cottage, and I'll turn on the heating for you and I'll do all that kind of stuff, versus what pattern is it seeing and how is it doing that automatically, because it's anticipating I'm going to go or not going to go based on my GPS location. But doing that in a secure way would be the hit. Having you know, baby cam be hacked, or people getting into your fridge to get into the rest of your network would be a miss. So we really have to make that experience very, very secure.
Right. So it sounds like, Mike, you and I need to spend some offline time geeking out on this stuff.
I'm pretty geeked
Same
out
here,
on
me
it.
as well. I'll be more interested, actually.
Sure. We'll have a side meeting. Absolutely.
So XenTegra as an organization, you know, we're obviously, you know, we're a VMware partner, is Omnissa partner, but our roots are in the VDI virtual app space. And, you know, we do have exposure to, you know, a number of vendors that shall not be named on this podcast. But I'd love to know your thoughts, Mike, on how you guys, the Omnissa team, differentiate yourself from the others on the market. You know, it's becoming more and more crowded every day, it seems like. There's a startup over here, there's some, you know, the major vendors over here. How are you guys differentiating yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's differentiating by really looking at it from a platform perspective. If you're focusing on seamless integration across multi-cloud and balancing that end user experience, you got it. And we're one of the only software manufacturers that are really focused on throttling between those two things, given that everything that's being thrown at us in the industry. So if you're developing a hybrid cloud strategy, you can, no matter what your policy is, whether you're like Amazon, you got to go to work 5 days a week, or you're hybrid cloud like us, we're saying we're 3 days a week mandatory. You work that with your manager. If you're customer facing, there's no reason to go. You got to be with your customers, and that's what you're paid to go do, and understand what their challenges are and how to solve them. Is you have to have that seamless experience anywhere. So what that does, as far as virtualization is concerned, it's an apps anywhere strategy that drives infrastructure costs down dramatically, and it streamlines application management to the persona, to the identity. So the person that is receiving the applications we already know what their job is. They can see some, but they can't see others, and it bubbles those up to the top, as you've alluded to. And with AI, we can take that to much more automation for that operational efficiency. So yes, there's vendors that say that they have VDI, but it's kind of like a car and a plane. You bring people from point A to point B, you have seats, you have windows, you have an engine. However, do you operate a plane like you would do a car? Not really. You don't drive an airplane like you drive a car, you fly an airplane. And it's people, process, and technology that come together to make that happen through an Omnissa platform, which we're uniquely positioned to solve.
Awesome. Okay. So, Mike, you've been around the industry long enough that, you know, this year is the year of VDI, right? So I heard that since 1995 was year 2000. VDI is coming. It's almost like Linux on the desktop. But can you see, you know, the year of VDI is always coming. Can you share some challenges that you may see, you know, in the industry when it comes to adoption of VDI? Because, like I said, it's always coming. It's never here. And, you know, on top of that, where does cloud play into this, the cloud desktop specifically?
It plays a major role because you're trying always, like I alluded earlier, to balance the end user experience with the security needs. It's a major challenge, and you're focusing on what needs to be done at the endpoint, and what needs to be done in the cloud, and you're going to have, you know, the year of VDI is also going to be challenged by the extreme edge. So it's no longer the desktop per se or the phone, it's the watch, it's the VR headsets. We're solving for some major problems and challenges in the healthcare, in the retail industry, even in the automotive industry, to bring that information to bear in a very secure way. So it's all about the use case for the persona. And that's where VDI is going to take leaps and bounds, because we're working with one customer right now that's a designer of automotive, and they're now walking around with these VR headsets and trying to get compute in there to be able to design a certain aspect of that vehicle, with all of the knowledge workers collaborating through in one point. That is a very high graphic, high intensity thing to do. So if you're able to do that with no restrictions and being able to optimize the infrastructure that it runs on, whether that's hybrid cloud, on-premise, extreme edge, and even to where I alluded to, you know, as much compute as the tip of my fingernail to be able to pinpoint that information in a seamless way, we've pretty much nailed VDI, the year of VDI at Omnissa.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. Is 2025 the year of VDI?
I don't know. I think it's an industry buzz. It's an industry buzz right now. We're going to see a lot of players in the market going to say that what they can do. I can't really say if that's the year. I just think it really looks at what you're really trying to solve for. And again,
sure,
if you're taking the end user experience at the heart of what you're doing, we'll call it the year of VDI, no year of VDI. It's solving the problem that's right in front of you.
Come on, Mike. I want to get the T-shirt printed. I want to get the T-shirt.
Okay. We're going to get you an Omnissa T-shirt as well. If you'd like.
There we go.
It's all good.
Rizwan, why don't you take? I've been hogging the spotlight here. Why don't you throw some questions at Mike, and I'll chime in with my thoughts.
Well, just a question, just a small question actually, with regards to the crystal ball time, basically. So, I mean, you already mentioned about VDI, but in general, if I have to ask about the end user computing space, which extends beyond a virtual client computing solution, how do you see that in a span of a decade, in 5 years, 10 years of time?
Well, 5-10 years in our industry is eternity. Moore's law will tell you that'll change in a heartbeat. I mean, it used to be that we were doubling the compute every, I remember what it was, 2-3 years. And now with AI, it's like we're putting layers in front of legacy systems and even new systems, and we're democratizing that and bringing the right data to the right situation at the right time to make decisions. That's what really is going to happen. So how is that going to manifest itself? It's not going to manifest itself through the traditional desktop. It's going to manifest itself through any type of devices, even chip to cloud devices, even servers, and bring all of that information to bear. So I wouldn't really call it desktop. End user computing will be extreme edge, where a thought in a task with the anticipation technology that I talked about becomes possible and becomes streamlined. So decisions pretty much get up to the top in a self-securing, self-configuring capabilities and autonomous workspaces that AI will bring to bear. And we're going to increase more personalized experiences and decentralized computing with enhanced security measures. That's what really is the direction we're taking, and we're doing it in leaps and bounds. And probably while we're talking, you know, it's being developed more and more through AI and algorithms. It's going to demand a lot from data centers, and a 10 times, what is it? For every query that's done through AI, it's I think it's 100 times more. You know the statistics probably better than I do of compute, or 10 times more. Sorry, the compute that's being demanded. That's why you see companies that are developing chips like Broadcom and Intel and all the new ones like Qualcomm. Everything's NVIDIA running into the market. Really be popular to be able to support these AI models that are driving this consumption in the data.
Right.
Awesome. That's wonderful.
Mike, you've been super generous with your time, but I got to ask this question. This is the question I ask every leader I interview. COVID made a mess of our industry. There's no doubt about that. But it did drive the work from home culture like a whole lot harder. What are your thoughts on work from home versus hybrid versus 100% in office? And this is not necessarily an Omnissa question. This is a Mike question.
My thoughts are, you know, we're going back to how consultants kind of worked, right? So consultants would get together, plan a project, go out in the field. They would get like a cubicle somewhere where they would come in the office to collaborate in the midpoint of the project, fix different things that were going off rails, and then come back to deliver and then to celebrate the win, celebrate how that project goes. So if you're really looking at cost and you're looking at power of integration, impact and influence, like I talked about earlier, you could drive to an office if your company says you've got to be there 3 days a week, like us, and have a 5 to 10 minute whiteboard session with your colleagues and go, wow, that was worth my drive to the office because I really didn't get that interaction from the Zoom. So as good as this gets as a virtual experience, there's nothing like human interaction. So that balance is what's going to be able to, impact and influence as we move forward. So if we can really bridge all of this together, let's continue to innovate so that the experience is seamless. But if you're really doing something important, get together with your colleagues and figure it out. It's going to be a lot quicker, a lot faster. And frankly, from a human approach, and I'll bring back my training in the Anthony Robbins organization, is really nothing is more rewarding than building a relationship with empathy and trust, getting to know that person, and you're in it together, whether it's a project that's going bad or something that's going really, really well. And if you elevate the organization that way in every aspect of its operations, whether that's leadership or ground up, now you've nailed it.
Right.
It doesn't matter what your business card says. It doesn't matter if it says VMware, Omnissa, Microsoft, or anyone else. That's the principles and values that I live by.
Yeah, and it kind of echoes my thoughts on the whole thing too. Is work from home certainly allows a lot of flexibility. But to your point, the in-person interaction, the in-person brainstorming, the in-person whiteboarding cannot be replaced. So I do make a point. I jump on a plane every quarter. My team is about 2,000 kilometers away from me. I jump on a plane every quarter, have a morning and afternoon of meetings. Can be as casual or as business oriented as you like, but it's so important to have that FaceTime. I 100% agree with what your thoughts.
It is. If you could figure out how to decipher my teenager's texts, please send me a dictionary, because that's my next project. Is I gotta get impact and influence in their lives, if you know what I'm saying, because that's almost a mystery. There's no technology that could solve for that. It's parenting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay, those are all the questions I have for you, Mike. So Rizwan, if you have any final questions, thoughts, we'll wrap this up and give Mike get Mike on his way.
Oh, well, I have nothing more to have any questions actually from Mike. Yep. So all good from my end.
I will say one last comment is I'm really pleased with the portfolio of services and that XenTegra has to offer, because we tend to, we haven't talked too much about partners in this, but I will end on this, is that they're very, very key to Omnissa's go-to-market strategy. Unlike Broadcom that went to certain past partners and made them requalify, which is their strategy, and that's cool. I think it works for them. We want to make sure that it's partner-led, Omnissa supported where it makes sense, and we want to deal with partners that understand how everything we talked about, how to integrate these systems, so systems integrators, as well as understanding specializations in EUC in the EUC space, and XenTegra fits that bill on all fronts. So thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure interviewing with you, and hope to get on a plane and see you, and we'll celebrate like we talked. So
absolutely. Thanks for your time.
Home automation. Hold on, home automation. Is that that's our next gig? Okay.
Yeah, that's the next gig. Yep.
I think that's a conversation over a beer, Mike. I don't think anyone wants to hear us ramble on about home automation on a microphone.
Anytime. Well, thank you. Thank the audience for listening, and appreciate the time. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Barry.